Charles Baker. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. No problem at all.
Where are you coming to us from right now?
I'm in LA right now.
LA? What part?
Yeah. I'm in a little area called Mission Hills, which is just north of North Hollywood, northeast of North Hollywood.
You like living in that area? Because I had a couple of friends. I'm in Brooklyn, but most of my friends live in Manhattan, and they just visited LA, and they're all talking. They're like, man, it's really nice out there. They're considering. I don't know if they're really seriously considering it, but they're thinking, they're like, man, after the pandemic happened, they are starting to get a little more pushed that way and are considering going out there. So you enjoy living there?
I do. It has its ups and downs, like every area. But my wife and I just bought our first house right before the pandemic here, and it's a totally different bear buying property, and as opposed to we've been renting most of our time.
Do you enjoy
LA,
being a homeowner? Is it kind of a pain in the ass because you gotta do everything yourself now?
It's a little of both. It's neat looking at a wall and going, hey, that's my wall. I can paint that wall whatever color I want to paint that wall. But then there's that extra responsibilities that you normally just call your landlord and go, hey, this pipe's leaking, and now it's like, oh wait, I'm the guy I have to call. Damn, I have to call somebody to fix the.
You're the landlord now.
Yeah, I'm the landlord now, but it's nice. My family needed it. We needed more space, a little bit more space than what we had, and there's something just kind of satisfying about being a homeowner. Even if it took me 50 years, but here I did it.
You know what? There's no such thing as too late. If you get there at any point.
Yeah, it's never too late.
But now going back, you were born in DC originally, right? And then you ended up being raised in Hawaii?
For some time, yeah. And just moved all over the world. My dad was military, and my mom wasn't. They were divorced, and she moved around a lot just as a civilian, and my dad was all over the world, and I was constantly bouncing back between them. So I was always in a different place.
Do you know the amount of places exactly?
I went to 17 different schools.
Wow.
I know that. I counted schools once, just from first grade till I got thrown out my junior year.
What'd you do?
That's my manager hates it when I tell that story.
I don't want to pressure you. I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to.
Well, I was young and dumb, and I was at a boarding school. Really, it was a Department of Defense school for dependents of children whose parents were stationed in foreign countries that didn't have English-speaking schools available. And so it was like a public school on a military base. And so the rules were, kind of strict. And I happened to have gotten the highest grade in the class one semester, and me and another person were both the top students in the class. And so we were given some extra time to stay out after curfew, and we used that time unwisely.
That's a perfectly diplomatic way to put that.
And got caught. And so because it was a military school and a military base and a diplomatic kind of issue, I was asked to leave the school. And so I instead just went to a community college in Texas and worked my way up into college that way. So it worked out.
Did you find it difficult moving around so much as a kid?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, it helped shape who I am. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people would benefit from at least traveling to different parts of the world and living among the people for a little while, just at least to maybe get some perspective. But as being as much as I did, I wouldn't recommend for anybody. I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Do you think that in some way, because you moved around so much, and you were familiarizing yourself with so many different people that it kind of helped you on later as an actor because you had all of this information to kind of pull from?
Yeah. Well, in a way, it kind of just dictated what I was going to do with my life, because that was literally the only way I could survive as a kid, was moving to a new town and assimilating as soon as possible. Pick up the slang, pick up the dialect, pick up the dress code, learn all the local popular songs, and become a local as fast as I could, so that they would, stop treating me as the outsider. And everywhere you go, you're the outsider. And so I got really good at kind of chameleon myself into the right position, every place I went. It kind of made it so I don't really know what else to do with, how else to live other than playing somebody else's skin.
Where do you think you felt
every
the
now and
most
then.
comfortable of all those places while you're moving around?
Ooh, I don't know if I ever was allowed to get comfortable at any of those places, um, which explains a lot now. So yeah, I tried to get comfortable in Pennsylvania, in a little town called Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where the Army War College is. It was a nice little town, but that didn't last, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up in Texas, Fort Worth, Texas, for a long time, and that was just because that's where a lot of family and people I knew were. And so a lot of times that kind of became my home base, if I just didn't have anywhere else to go and didn't know where to be. And I stayed there for a while, but I was never really comfortable there. And LA is really where um, it's really where I feel like I fit in. Um, it's where I what I do, where the jobs are. They may not happen here, but this is where they hire a lot of the actors for those jobs. And so it just made sense for me to come out here. And
Who's got the best food of all the places you lived? Where's like one of those places like it's got all the
that's
best restaurants?
that's hard. Right now, for me, Texas, Fort Worth, Texas, and Dallas had some of the best food that my wife and I, and my older kids remember. But for me, traveling around the country doing different jobs, Chicago had some pretty damn good food, and New Mexico has an interesting amount of interesting restaurants, I should say.
So wait, then did you
Good.
did you meet your wife then back in Texas while you were at college?
Well, yeah, after college, right after college, or while I should have been in college, I guess. We were both doing theater in Fort Worth, working at a theater called Hip Pocket Theater in Southwest Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm.
And we happened to meet on stage there. We had our first date. It was actually the first Star Wars movie, the episode one, not Star Wars, but
The prequel series.
yes, the prequel series. My brain just went. And then we got married on the same place where we met on stage at that theater. I had our wedding at the theater.
Yeah. So
And 21 years ago.
then going back, your first like kind of foray into entertainment in general is you were a singer, correct?
That's what I was trying to be. Yeah.
And then also you were playing piano as well, right?
Well, I taught myself piano. As a music major at a college, you had to have a secondary instrument. And so I chose piano as my secondary instrument. And I took some piano college classes on piano, but I mostly just self-taught with piano because I figured I could be like Billy Joel or Elton John, get out there and play piano and sing. But then when I started trying to perform, I realized that I couldn't lug a piano around, and most clubs didn't have their own piano. And so I started teaching myself guitar, just so I had someone to accompany with, because I've always just been kind of a loner and didn't really know anybody to be in a band with. So I just figured I'd have a way to accompany myself until I found a band. Um,
What was it that first
and
got
then,
you into music?
well, I played violin when I was like 4 years old. Um, for some reason, my mom put me into violin classes, and I was apparently really good. I don't really remember a lot of it, but and then I got put into a we moved and I got put into another musical into a band, and we were allowed to choose our instruments, and I played the drums. And then I moved to another school, and they were allowed to choose our instruments, so I chose trumpet. Um, and I kept trying all these different instruments, and then I moved to a school, and they had a choir, and I was in the band playing drums, but I also joined the choir, and then I started like learning about singing and getting more in tuned with the singing part of it, and then I joined the show choir, and an a cappella group, and got into all of the choirs, and that got me a vocal scholarship when I went to the community college. I actually got a vocal scholarship, and so I used that as my way to get. I figured I'd go teach music, like all these different teachers that I had that kind of inspired me, and so that's what I really went to college for. And then while I was doing musicals, the director of the musicals asked me if I would do a play, and I was kind of like, without singing and dancing, that seems boring. Um, but like I went, I'll try it, and it was a totally different thing. But it was the first time I'd ever really got so immersed into a character on stage that I became that character, and
What was that first play?
it was a show called oh you can't take it with you.
I don't know if I know that one. I know shows a little bit because I'm a
Yeah,
drummer actually, and I played drums for musical theater all throughout my childhood. So I know mostly musicals. I know some plays, but my knowledge is
right.
kind of weak.
Yeah, it was. I wasn't familiar with it until we did it, and now I'm doubting if that was the actual. That was one of the plays we did in that school. If that was the first one, um, I could easier describe the plot of it. And it was a guy who was an artist who had been um, in an accident and was paralyzed from the neck down, and decided that he wanted to uh, was being held in the hospital and kept on life support. And he decided he wanted to go home, and the hospital wouldn't let him because if went home, he would die. And so he got a lawyer and sued the hospital to let him go. And it was just kind of this, he was an artist and he couldn't be an artist. And he was being held there against his will kind of play. And I'm pretty sure that You Can't Take It With You wasn't the name of that play, but that was the play.
It's kind of a darker story, especially
It
going. This is the
was.
first time being in a play. I feel like it
Right,
would be
right,
easier to go in doing something light, like I don't know, like Annie or something. Well, that's not a
right.
play. I don't know. It's only
Yeah,
the one play that I know very well is It's Only a Play. Have you ever heard of
right.
that one?
No,
Well, that's like
no.
a comedy.
Okay.
It's a play about making a play. So that would have been a
Right,
nice,
right.
easy foray instead of going and doing
That would
something
have
that's
been.
so dark.
I had done lots of musical theater. I'd done Annie twice. I had played the MC in Cabaret. Um, I had been in a few, little known musical shows, and I'd done a lot of that. So at the time, I was really in tune with the theater uh, world, but I hadn't done a lot of like just straight on plays.
Hmm.
And so that was, yeah, it was a new kind of thing for me. But then that's when I really thought, okay, I'm gonna do both. I'm gonna be a music teacher and a drama teacher, and do musical theaters, and I wanted like getting more into this acting. And the more I did it, and the more I started doing like professional theater with the teachers that I was working with in the schools, they were also working in the professional theaters. Um, I started going, at some point, I hope I feel confident enough in my abilities. I want to start doing television or film. But it was, kind of a, just a wish at that time. Um, and I was always watching interviews with other actors inside the actor studio, was like constantly watching that and just trying to learn as much as I could about what tools I needed to really be like, um, have some kind of like get a foot into this business. And it was actually watching an interview with Keira Knightley where she said, "Pay attention to mime class." I'm not going to do a Keira Knightley impersonation. I'm sorry. She says, "Pay attention in mime class," because like a lot of film now is on green screen. She was talking about Pirates of the Caribbean and having to do all these scenes where it was just a green screen and no actual props, and they were throwing things that weren't there, and having to do all this miming. And I thought they don't really have any mime training in schools in America.
That's
And so
true.
that's why I was working at the theater where I met my wife. That was the director and the writer of that theater was a trained mime. And someone told me, he studied with Marcel Marceau, and he's like the American like mime. You should go study from him. And so I went and learned from him. And then once I really felt like I knew I had a rounded education in acting, I found an agent that I wanted to get with, and I started trying to figure out how to get on with an agent. And it took me about 3 years to finally get her to sign me. She signed me on, and then it's just been a whirlwind ever since. And like once I found what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it, um, I made a plan, and I've just kept with that plan, and just
This might sound stupid, but
yeah.
what is a mime lesson like? Because I've taken music lessons my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
There's rhythms, there's specific things that you analyze. Is there I mean, this is gonna sound really stupid. Is there a lot of talking in a mime lesson, or is it mostly like observing and then kind of analyzing what someone's doing?
A little of both. And once you start getting to the master classes, then yeah, you'll sometimes show up to a group, and it's all just follow along. Mime is mostly about muscle control, isolating muscles, and uh, and so that's really learning how to control certain muscles, and how to create an illusion of instead of just grabbing at the air, you're pulling on a rope, and how to create those illusions. And a lot of it's just kind of like, well, you just go start with a flat hand and get it as flat as you can, and you know just kind of explain stuff. When you're holding a ball, it's rounded, and when you throw the ball, get it flat, and when you're dropping, it's little stuff like that. And it's all about just learning how to control your muscles, and muscle memory, and creating the space in your body to imagine you're doing whatever it is you're doing that you have to imagine you're doing, which sometimes you have to do on film. And it's about movement and how you carry yourself, and how everybody walks and holds themselves differently. And you incorporate that into your character builds. I've started looking into it, and it's like, have you ever seen Who Framed Roger
Oh
Rabbit?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Where they had to mime for the cartoons.
Yeah. So Bob Hoskins, the only reason he got that part was because he was a trained mime. Johnny Depp got Benny and June because he was a trained mime. Um, my favorite, what's his name? Daniel, C3PO. Um,
Oh, Daniel,
Anthony Daniels.
Anthony
Is that it?
Daniels. Yes.
Anthony Daniels. He got the role of CP3O because of his mime skills. And I thought, well, shit. that's a trick, because I mean they weren't walking around with white face and pretending walls were there, but they used those skills as a way to enhance their characters, and especially in some of those cases they needed those skills in order uh, interact with their environment. And so like, why wouldn't you learn that? And it turns out, you look at a lot of people had been talking about how a lot of British actors were taking all the great roles, all these great American roles, and um, and all I can say is, well, it's because they're better trained.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that is affluence, and they have them, they have the resources in which to take the time to really study theater. But just the school of theater is different. In England, they get the mime training. Here, we don't. Mm-hmm. And so I went and found it on my own.
This isn't someone who's British, but someone I've always thought encapsulated being trained as an actor and then putting it to use. Because a lot of people get trained really well at something and they don't apply it. They just kind of learn it. But someone I always thought was absolutely fantastic at applying those skills was Kelsey Grammer, specifically when he was Frasier. The way he carried himself was just, if it was, he could be funny as a character without saying anything, just because he knew exactly how to put every part of his body, how he'd walk across the stage, how he'd be, he's supposed to be like a pompous asshole, and the way he portrayed that just from that skill, I think he applied that better than anyone I maybe ever seen.
Right. And that's what mime helped me with, was learning how to use your body in ways like that to make it a part of your character. And every character can have a different physicality like that really kind of boosts the believability.
So how long specifically were you studying mimes?
I was with that theater for 6 years.
Okay. So how old are you at that point once you leave the theater?
I was in my mid-30s, just starting on Breaking Bad, when I was kind of maybe doing one or two shows a season at that point, instead of every show of the season like my wife and I had started doing. And it was just kind of a transition. I was doing voice dubs for animes, in between doing theater gigs, in between trying to I was dancing in ballet companies, because I got a lot of dance training while I was doing the musical theater stuff. And so I was doing everything I could in the business just to stay afloat.
I was going to ask actually about those voice dubs, because I don't know, do you keep yourself kind of up to date on the whole kind of degenerate culture of Breaking Bad memes, of just the absolute like ridiculous stuff? Because I asked the same question Peter Dyseth, who was Bill Oakley on Better Call Saul. He was on the show. Right. I asked him the same question, but you have a specific overlap, because one of the big Breaking Bad memes is the One Piece is real, but you were actually in One Piece for like 5 years, right? Doing off and on vocal work.
Yeah. I'm not really paying that much attention unless my kids bring it up to me and go, "Dad, look, you're in this meme," which is just weird. But I don't. Yeah, if they pop up, I see it and I'll go, "Okay, that's funny." But
to be honest, that's good. You shouldn't. they're so ridiculous.
It's safer that way. It's safer that way, I think.
I mean, they're always like it's always positive stuff, because the people who are making them love the show, but it's just at points, it's just like, I'm going to be honest, I find it very funny, which makes me then think, what the fuck is wrong with me that I think this is so funny?
That's all right. You can find the value. That's the important part. As long as you...
My generation has a weird sense of humor, and there are times where I just fall straight into that trap, because I think I don't know if I'm generation, whatever the generation is between Z and millennial. Why? I don't know. I'm a little older than Z and I'm younger than millennial. So
yeah, right in those between. You're your own thing, man. Don't pay attention to labels, man. You're just your own thing.
Cool. I had a friend in college who used to say he was a sovereign human, That was his
Yeah,
thing. I'm a sovereign human. What that
right
basically
on.
meant was he listens to the Grateful Dead a lot and the Smashing Pumpkins. That was his. I'm a sovereign human, man.
Right on.
Well,
Right on.
so
Yeah.
going back on
It's the
track.
Matrix. You can be whatever you want to be,
That's
as
true.
long as you believe it, man.
That's true. I mean, hey, and there's the fact that the entertainment business exists at all is almost like its own matrix. That there's a whole business on just pretending to do things, which is it's kind of
Yeah.
an amazing thing, and it's a really
Yeah.
distinctly human thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it started as, theater started as prayer, as a way of worshiping nature, and I think that's still a lot of what we do is we bring something to people that you don't otherwise get in real life.
You know
It's
what?
not just entertainment in general. I don't mean TV, but I mean entertainment in general is just human beings need it
Yeah.
to survive. Without it, it's Nietzsche said, without music, life would be meaningless.
If
That's
we each had a joint right now, this could turn into like a 4-hour Joe Rogan podcast.
That's just. I'm sorry. Can you still? Oh, you can't even smell it. Sorry. Whatever.
I wanted to go back because I wanted to ask about so in '06, you're doing all this acting. '06, you wrote, composed the music for, produced, and directed your own short film, The Watterson Project. And
Right.
I wanted to
Right.
ask about that because you had this experience, learning acting as a mime, being a singer. But out of all those job titles that it took to produce that short film, what going into it did you feel personally you were like the least qualified for?
Ooh, writing really.
Hmm.
That's the play's the thing. Writing is something that is so important, and most people don't realize how really hard it is and how much skill it takes to actually write a good script.
How long did it take to write the film?
Not long, but there's a caveat to that. That short film was based on a friend of mine's feature film script that he decided he didn't want to do. And I read his feature film and I loved his feature. And it was later on when he decided he didn't want to do anything with it, I thought, can I make it into a short? And he goes, yeah, whatever. And I said, I'm not gonna rewrite your script. I'm not gonna cut your script. I'm just gonna write a synopsis of your script into short. And so I had the base, I had the story to go with, and all I had to do was just write some really shitty dialogue to connect it all. I did that project kind of as a test to see if I could.
Had you
I
written
wanted
anything before that?
I had a group of friends that we were doing sketches, little like joke commercials and stupid, game show kind of stuff.
Is that on the internet anywhere?
No, because we actually literally split up right before YouTube really kicked in. We couldn't figure out ways to start to actually display our material, and we were at a loss because we just had a website with a link that you could click and it would download the video, and then you could watch it after an hour of downloading, and it just and so long story short, our group was kind of like, we're kind of done with this, and then suddenly there's this, look at this YouTube thing, and like, oh,
If it had just been a couple years later.
oh, so close.
Well, who's got who has the copies of all of this material?
I have a lot of it, a lot of the unedited stuff still on mini DV tapes, but I have absolutely no way. I've have a way to capture it, but a lot of them have degraded and aren't that good. And it wasn't good enough to bring up. It really wasn't. It was all just a bunch of guys learning how to do it. And a lot of it was me learning how to run a camera, how to do lights, how to what not to wear, how to not look totally stupid on camera. But I found anytime I got a group of friends together to try and make a short film, and I'd say, hey man, you just hold the camera and I'll set all the settings. They were mostly automatic mini DV cameras. You didn't have to know a lot. Just hold it here and I'll do the thing. Um, and then I come back and look at the footage and it's like they were just like zooming in and out, playing with special effects. It's like, man, just trust, what I said to do. And I would have, like, we could have done that later, but now I can't use this footage, And so I finally went, I'm going to make a movie that I'm do everything so I can show my friends that, look, I know what I'm talking about. Now, will you please just hold the camera and will you please, and it was just to try out a way to one, see, how, if it could be done. And I didn't play any roles in that short film. I literally was just cameraman. I had a niece who was probably like 9, 10 years old, who was living next door to one of the scenes we were shooting. And so she came and held the boom mic for me for a scene. But it was just to see what I could do without any interference of someone going, "Oh, I can do better than what he thinks," and just, and it worked out pretty. I mean, it worked out okay. I mean, it got accepted to a film festival, which was really my only goal. I think I'd submitted to like 10 of them, and it got into one, which was fine because it was just a fun little test project. I was really proud. A lot of the actors that I had in it been in some pretty decent careers, and it was really at the beginning of their careers. I was like, I know how to pick talent. I know that.
And that's got to help you down the road, even just as an actor, because if you're directing something, when you're acting later on and the director comes to you and gives you a critique or a comment about something, it must be easier for you to see where they're coming from because you've already been in their shoes, right?
Yeah, well, that was the other thing. It was such a great education in what everybody else does. I had to pick out wardrobe for a few of the guys. And so, like making these decisions and going, okay, well, what am I going to do? And how do I was doing the art, I put posters up in one of the rooms. And I think the one real room that we actually shot an entire scene in that wasn't outdoors, or, I did all the set design, and it was all just a learning experience, and being like understanding what producers are going through, and like, how sometimes you just have to beg, borrow, and steal to get a shot. And so yeah, it gave me a great perspective, and I think every actor should do that. Should try a different role than just acting, so they can see what hair and makeup it's going through, and how a lot of times they get the short end of the stick because they're the ones whose time gets cut when everybody's running behind. Mm-hmm. And just really see how much pressure is on everybody and what to do. My first movie kind of experience, I was working as a grip, helping with lights, and I wasn't getting paid. I was just doing it so I could learn how to do it. And I worked through that side for a while and watched actors, and like was able to see what the lights were doing and how people presented themselves. And so I had a better idea of what was going on. And then just, went for it. And I'm still doing that. I'm still like, I just finished cobbling together a little script, and I'm going to try and do another short just to see. Now I'm going to see how much I can shoot with just a phone, mm-hmm. And see what kind of project I can put together with just my phone, but shot like a film.
There's a music video director. Have you ever heard of him? His name's Cole Bennett.
I can't say I have.
He does a bunch of stuff. He usually works with rappers and hip hop artists, but he recently, I don't know if it's a sponsored thing or what, but he has recently started putting out a bunch of videos that are shot completely on iPhone. And I think he uses this program called Filmic Pro. It's a software.
Yeah,
I think that's what he's using.
That's what I'm using.
But you'd be amazed at the results he's getting. And it's not like, sometimes I remember, especially around like the iPhone 5 era, it would be like, this was shot on an iPhone, and you'd watch it and you go, I can tell.
Yeah.
And now it's like, you get HDR, so you can do better color grading. It's a whole new thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a completely different thing. And I use the Filmic app too. I didn't upgrade to the subscription version. I'm just sticking with the cheap because I'm a cheap bastard and I like it that way.
That's my whole show right now is produced with, well, except for like the lights and the camera and everything. It's all free software. I'm using a piece of program called OBS, which is streaming service, open source. And then I edit everything in DaVinci Resolve. You ever heard of that?
That's what I use.
That's the bet. I do it all. I was like, why am I going to pay for this if I could do this all? I was paying $50 a month to do Premiere Pro. I'm like, this is way better. I can eat McDonald's a couple extra times a week now that I don't have to pay for Adobe Suite.
Right.
So I was gonna say, going out. So 06, the Waterston Project comes out, and then what is it? 2 years after that you get picked up for Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so you had your manager at the time, right?
Not yet. No, I just had an agent in Texas. She was actually based in Waxahachie, Texas. And it was just me and her.
So how did your agent in Texas get connected with the production and get you that gig?
Actually, that was I got connected. It was Texas used to have a pretty decent, thriving film business, and then the politicians started getting greedy, and so a lot of our business shifted to New Mexico. And I was just getting started as an actor with an agent, and I met with one of the casting directors in Texas and did a workshop with her, and she really liked my work in the workshop. But she ended up moving her offices to New Mexico because that's where the business was now. And so a lot of times she would get auditions in for something shooting in New Mexico. She would contact another casting director in Texas and ask her to tape auditions for her in Texas. And if we could get the part, then she would bring us in as a modified local hire. Because while they had the production crew in New Mexico, they had not yet had enough actors migrate to New Mexico for the amount of work they were getting for local talent. And so they were picking from Texas and Oklahoma to find actors for a lot of shows in New Mexico. And it just so happened that I had already made contact with the casting director. And for any actors out there starting right now, casting directors are the ones who get you the jobs. Your agent will help connect you to casting directors, but the more you can do to impress those casting directors, the more they're going to be likely to go, hey, oh yeah, this person. And I learned that quickly. And, so I met with the casting director, and then she's the one who got me the audition for my first episode of Breaking Bad. And then after that episode, then it just kind of snowballed from there, just based on how the story was evolving. And luckily they kept me around.
How many days was your first contract for?
I'm pretty sure just my first one was just for one day. Mm-hmm. It was really for the day before, and like I was only going to work for one day, but they had me fly in the day before to get fitted for my wardrobe, and that approved by Vince Gilligan. And then I worked the next day and then flew out right after that. And that was pretty much I would just come in for one episode or for one day of work and then fly out the next day.
So then how many shoots did you have before it kind of became apparent that I'm not just a day player and that I'm actually going to be recurring on a very frequent basis?
Well, the very frequent basis was never really sure. We're never really sure when it was going to be. But the second time they brought me back, because the first episode I did was supposed to be all I was doing. Mm-hmm. But then they brought me back, and the script literally had my name as Skinny Stoner in the first script, and then my first line in my next episode that I was in, it was still Skinny Stoner up until I walk up to Tuco's bodyguard, his doorman, and go, "Yo, man, I'm Skinny Pete." And then from that minute on in the script, anytime I spoke, it said Skinny Pete instead of Skinny Stoner. And I went, they gave me a name.
That must have felt good.
Oh, it felt really good. I think I probably called my wife right there while we were shooting, like, they gave me a name. I have a name now. I gotta go. Once they gave me a name, I knew that it was a possibility they could bring me back anytime. There was no guarantee of it. And I was so new to the business that I really, didn't really know what what I could do or if I could do anything, to find out or to get a guarantee. But I think it was beneficial because the show was kind of starting off kind of squeaky, and they didn't really have a lot. They didn't have an audience yet, and so they didn't really know how it was going to go, and so they didn't have the draw for bigger talent. And so they were like, "Oh, just bring that guy back. He's holding his own. Let's just bring him back for this episode." And it just kind of kept going like that.
I was gonna say when we talked earlier about how you moving all these places, you got familiarized. There we go. Second try.
You can do it
with all these people. Maybe I did have a little joint before we. I never know. Maybe I snuck one. No one will ever know, and I can't speak clearly. But you met all these different people. Mm-hmm. Was there a specific place where you lived where you kind of were able to draw from for the character of Skinny Pete, or is it a specific person that you went for?
In New Mexico. I lived in Albuquerque. I literally went to school about 3 blocks away from where Skinny Pete's house was in El Camino, when I was 10 years old. So I had an idea of of the dialect. Not a lot of people are familiar with the New Mexico dialect, but there is a New Mexico dialect. And so I was aware of the dialect. I was aware of the culture. And so that was the big, like, oh yeah, I know this place. I
what
know
are the
where
keys
we are.
to that dialect?
There was pressure when I was a kid, and I was a very lily white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed child in a very Hispanic school. There was a lot of pressure for everyone to have a little bit of a Hispanic kind of accent, which you'd say things like, "Hey, chill, SA," it's not like, "Hey, man," and it was a very subtle. You couldn't be too over the top about it, because they'd be like, "What do you think you are?" But you had to keep it subtle enough so that you fit in without being a caricature, and that was a little bit of Skinny Pete's. He had a little bit of that Latin flavor to him, which actually there were a lot of people who commented once that they saw a picture of me outside of the role of Skinny Pete and went, I didn't know that guy was white. Okay. And it was an interesting kind of, that's a lot of the culture in New Mexico. And it's just like, if you live in Texas, you're going to have a little bit of a Southern accent. If you live in California, you're going to be like, stoned all the time. It's just one of those cultural things.
I just started saying, I've been in New York about 6 years, I think. And I've just started saying, get online. Like if there's a line for something, I'm going to get online instead of get in line. And I hate it. I absolutely hate it. It's the worst. You don't get on a line. If there's a line of people, you get in the fucking line. You don't. But these people in New York, they don't know. They don't talk about
it. When in Rome, man. When in Rome.
You know what? I might as well. And if I move to California, then I'll pick that up. Might as well. So then, when you first got called for Breaking Bad, and you said you had all these, like, this kind of Hispanic flair that you added to it, what was the initial directive that they gave you? Was it just like, you're a meth addict, you're friends with Jesse, go for it? Or do they have any specific characteristics?
No, it was all skinny stoner. Originally, there were supposed to be 3 different characters. It was skinny stoner, tattooed stoner, and chubby stoner. And then they broke it down. I did the first audition like that, and then the second audition I came back, and they had condensed 2 characters into one, and it said skinny tattooed stoner and chubby stoner, and which ended up being me in combo. And all it was you're just a stoner. And when I got there and did the first episode, the biggest direction I got was, hey man, stop playing it so stoned. You're too stoned. Don't be so stoned. And it didn't even, like, the meth part didn't really come up until the end of the scene. and then after that, it seemed like, oh, we're just skinny meth heads. And I was like, no, I'm a skinny stoner, man. But you know, story is what it is. And they would just write stuff, and then oh, okay, well, this is what I do now. And I just went with the flow with that, and did what I could with what I originally thought was just one episode. The character that I made, I kind of forgot about him, and they called me up and went, "Hey, we want you to play it again." I went, "Oh shit, what did I do? How did I do that?" And I had to kind of like work my way back into that character, and I used the line, "Yo, my pops is a contractor. He could hook you up." That was kind of like my cue that I used to remind me how Skinny Pete talked. Like, my pop's a contractor. He could hook you up.
That's a classic line.
Yeah. And so I use that, kind of in my memory is like the baseline of, Skinny Pete's dialect and his character. And then just tried to sound like most of the gibberish that he was saying was made sense to me.
So do you have like now, because is there like more to Skinny Pete that was never put on air that you kind of had to have for yourself, so that way when you said things there was more context to it, like just so there was more of a character? Or is everything that we saw you think is really what that character is?
I think what you saw is what you get. I actually remember asking one of the writers once about a scene. It's like, should I put something between the lines in this line? They're like, no, do not put anything between the lines. Just do the lines. And like, okay, I knew where you wanted me. It was a very kind of two-dimensional kind of character, but it was, the audience saw through it and ended up, it was really the audience is why we kept coming back.
Well, Charles, we're almost out of time, but before I let you go, I went on Reddit, something I like to do on the show, went to the Breaking Bad Reddit. I said, you're going to be a guest on the show. And I said, any of the fans had some questions, don't worry, I weeded out. There was only a couple things. I will be honest. Like 6 of them were you playing the piano, which we know you were playing the piano.
Yeah.
And then like 4 of them were, are you a piano? Got rid of those. But we sorted them down, and I got a couple good ones. So I got a few for you before I let you go, if that's okay with you. This first one comes from... Perfect. This comes from Pretty Neat Username, who says, by the finale of the series, there was so much to wrap up with Walt's story. How did you feel when you found out Vince managed to squeeze in one last turn for Skinny and Badger?
Honored. It was the biggest deal for me to be allowed to be in part of the finale. And I kind of felt like it was, I think the audience might have been like, hey, why wasn't Skinny Pete and Badger in the finale, instead of, wow, wasn't that a great finale? Because they kind of left us hanging for a little while, and nobody really knew where we were. And I think that was part of the closure of the show, was letting people have one last wave at the cute fuzzy couple. And so
I like that description of the cute fuzzy couple.
I just made it up too.
That's perfect. There you go. That's the wonderfulness of having training in acting, is being spontaneous.
Right. That's absolutely.
This next one comes from Professional Point 508, who says, what really was Badger and Pete's obsession with Babylon 5?
What isn't? It's the same one we have with Star Wars and Star Trek and Left 4 Dead. We love it all.
The zombies, man.
It's the zombies, man. Yeah, go on.
No. Keep going. Say what you can say.
I was going to say, I personally didn't know much about Babylon 5. I was more of the Trekkie Star Wars video games aspect. So I, as an actor, I couldn't get into any Babylon 5 kind of banter with you right now. Sorry.
I couldn't either, so that works out. This last one comes from DAA Horse, who says, what's your personal opinion on what happened with Pete after the ending of El Camino?
Like, what do I think happened to him, or what do I think about what happened to? Because he got arrested at the end. I was proud that that Skinny Pete took the hit for his guy. I think it was a he probably didn't do too much time for just having an illegal car, for just he probably didn't get too much time. He probably didn't do too hard. So I think he was proud to do that time to give Jesse a chance to get away to Mexico.
And then, and here we are.
And here we are.
Well, Charles, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
No problem, Scotty. It was fun.
Cool. And thank you to everyone who watched. Charles, if you wouldn't mind just sticking around for one more second.
No.
Thanks to everyone. We'll be live next Friday at 8. I have to and then we got a week off, and then we're back with Bill Wirtz again in early April. So I'll see you guys later.